what's up, guys? Welcome back to the trainer feed. My name is Angel Sanchez. We are your hosts. I am Angel Sanchez. We have JD, Jacques Delagere.
What's going on, everybody?
Today we're a man down, and the man is hitting the regen hard, as we said. So DB, David Bravo, he's taking a little bit of a breather, but
he's here in spirit.
He is here in spirit. Everything good on your end?
Yeah, things are good, man. I'm buzzing for this episode, and I'm buzzing for tonight, tomorrow. We'll take it that later on, but you're good?
I'm good. All good over here. I'm not watching the Islanders or any NHL, but maybe it's worth taking a look.
Game 7, man. Game 7 of the conference finals tonight. Then if they win, they go to the Stanley Cup final. I don't know, man. Yeah, and I'll go into it later, like for anyone that's going to bother listening to the end. But, dude, they got smacked 8-0 in Game 5. Sorry, 8-0, yeah, which is absolute demolishing. I'm like, all right, these guys are done. And then Wednesday, to Alex said, this will be the last game. They're down 2-0, and I'm like, they won 3-2 that game.
Okay.
Buzzing. Anyway.
All right. So we won't distract too much from our guest today, which is Missy Castro. So we worked with Missy for a while at 76th Street. So it's going to be a good episode. We're going to have her on, and let's welcome Missy Castro. Hi, Missy.
What's up, Missy?
Hi, how are you guys?
Pretty good.
Doing well.
Here.
How are you?
I'm good. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed.
Happy Friday. Oh, man. I miss seeing you at the gym, and I miss seeing, like, every time I hear Happy Friday, I just remember, Jordan running around screaming, woohoo, Happy Friday.
I know. I miss you guys so much.
How have you been?
It feels like life is starting to come back, though, which is so nice. It's been, so crazy. Yeah. I've been good. How have you guys been?
Same. Just trying to manage, trying to, stay afloat, do what we got to do, and enjoy our time, right? Like, I feel like, I don't want to speak for Jacques, but I think that, 2020 taught us a couple of lessons, and one is that everything is so finite. So trying to just make the most of what we got going on now. Things are opening back up. Very grateful for that, and just happy to be outside.
Yeah, definitely. How's sports club been?
I think it's good. It's definitely getting. I know I see you there every so often. I feel like I saw you there last week, right? It's good. It's getting busier. That club can be off sometimes in the sense that there are some hours where it's just crazy busy, then it's just dead. Yeah. So you get those peaks and whatnot. But I love walking on that space, like, especially as we all came from 76th Street, which we love it and put so much. We like so much. Sorry, the sports club has so much of a space, and especially when they had the outdoor space to go out with clients, I thought that was pretty convenient, and just in general to work out was pretty nice. And then having a deck's kind of cool. Have you checked out the deck yet?
I have, yeah. I spent a lot of time there. It's so nice. Yesterday they opened up the steam room and the saunas again. So yesterday,
they did
into that, which was really nice. There's so much to do there, which is so wonderful. And it's just good to be around people and not have to wear a mask, and
for real,
just feel a little bit a sense of normalcy. So
how's the little one?
She's good.
She's chilling right now?
She's napping. Yeah,
that's a hard life.
Hero, right?
I know. Yeah. How's Alfie?
He's good. He's right down here kneading. Does Shakira knead? It's like what cats typically do. They're like, it's like got a toy and it's like pulling like this. It's almost like they were like mixing a DJ record. It's so funny.
No, she doesn't. She sometimes digs. She likes to dig. She has a little sleeping bag. I don't know if you can see her. She's hiding in there right now.
Oh, baby.
Yeah. Oh, snap. She's in the bag.
This is so funny.
That's awesome.
You want to make a cameo, mister? Come. Here we go. We got this guy's making a cameo too.
Hey, buddy.
What's this?
Aw, I miss you.
You miss him?
So cute. He's such a good boy.
Yeah, he is really good.
Yeah. He's getting fussy with his food though. It's trying to drive me a little mad.
Really?
Yeah, you give him a carrot and he's like, I'm too good for this.
She had to have surgery on her mouth recently, so I had to cook all her food, and she could only eat certain things. She had to have a bunch of teeth removed. So I was cooking her chicken and sweet potatoes and peas. So she's eating all like human food, and now she's like giving me a hard time about going back to dog food, which is awful. So,
Oh my goodness.
the work in progress, but
So let's talk a little bit about your fitness career and dive into your professionalism as a fitness professional, if that makes sense. But for our guests, because obviously we know you pretty well, but for our guests who are listening, let's take a dive into how did you enter into the fitness industry? Sorry, I'm like fumbling on my words. Too much caffeine.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been an athlete my whole life. I always had personal trainers, and I kind of wanted to understand the background of it, right? Like I was always being told what to do, but I didn't really understand why I was doing certain things. And so I started off as a spin instructor. I was really into cycling for a long time. And then I got into Pilates. And then I actually got certified with a bodybuilder up in Rhode Island. And so I've learned about fitness through so many different aspects. And I worked for Equinox prior to becoming a personal trainer, and it just kind of like flowed right into that, which was great. And Equinox was amazing and taught me so much. And so now I'm just doing privates. I train mostly virtually. Um, I specialize in prehab rehab. It's kind of like where I found my niche. I've had a lot of injuries, so I can empathize with that. I also study neuroscience, so I kind of bring that to the table. I just am really enamored with human behavior and movement and patterns. Um, and so I've just created this lifestyle coaching through fitness, and it's really rewarding, and I enjoy it very much, and it can take me down so many different roads, which is awesome.
Cool. That you answered so many questions that I had. I was actually about to ask what your specialty was as well. But you did mention the prehab rehab, and also that you have had some injuries in the past. I know Jacques is the same, similar mindset in that sense, where he has had injuries, he's had surgeries, and he likes to coach people who are recovering. How can you say, like, how did that come about? Is it like an injury that you had that was just like, it was one injury? Was it multiple injuries? And then how have you translated that to your training?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of injuries throughout my life. I was in a really bad car accident when I was 20, and I dislocated my hip. I had 3 injuries in my spine, and they told me I would definitely never run again, and I may never walk normally. And so, and like I always wanted to run a marathon my whole life, and I had this mindset, like I was like, I'm not going to let this stop me. And so I that was the biggest injury for me, and it taught me so much about embracing your injuries and being able to still do fitness and practice without it getting in the way, kind of like using it instead of it using you, type of a thing. So
Yeah. Jacques, do you want to speak a little bit to that? Because I know you've had injuries and surgeries as well.
Yeah, I think there's so much more to it when someone tells you you probably won't be able to or can't, and then I think um, in our heads, I think it's always like you picture it, or it sounds like a movie scene, right? When you view in your head, and I think when you're in such a vulnerable place, when you have the injury, and even though neither of us have lost a limb, but these things do feel like the end of the world at times when you're at the worst, and I think that's something I always relate to, is when someone has gone through one of those times, like it gets better, it gets so much, like the road does get sweeter. It doesn't feel like that right now, but it's, I think, really we were talking of like not being able to run or walk properly, and then you already completed one marathon. I know you're training for another marathon, and that just speaks volumes to, to go from one extreme of not being able to run and to like fucking blow out of the park and crush a marathon, right? Like I know that was a big deal for you. But yeah, I can relate exactly what you're saying, and I think it's not that you can't understand if you haven't been there, but when you have been there, you know exactly what those sentiments are. And it's hard to explain to someone who hasn't felt it. And I think that's why what makes yourself such a effective trainer for pre and post rehab, because you know that as soon as something feels a little out of shape, you're like, it's not worth tweaking. Or, you know, I even had some slow conversations with a client this week when they're like, oh, I've had a knot in my back for 2 weeks. I'm like, tell me, I want to help, you know. And you like, the more you tell us, the more we can help you. So I think what you speak on, I can relate to, but it's just so powerful, because it's just, you have those moments internally, those internal thoughts where you're just like, oh, like, again, you don't, like, if someone asks you, why do you want to run? I think the fact that you were told you couldn't probably spurred you on to go, okay, how do I not only show that I run, but how do I even push it further out the park? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I think just to kind of backtrack just a little bit in terms of working with clients with injuries, it's like creating a safe space for them. Like, I know that was something that was so important to me when I was training or like rehabbing, or like I'm constantly rehabbing, because once you have an injury once, like it's something that you have to pay attention to
Continuously at some point, yeah.
and you can heal it by all means. You can absolutely heal it. Your body is meant to heal itself. And I think that's one of the most powerful things as trainers and like working in fitness is, and athletes, is like being able to teach others and yourself how your body is able to heal itself. But again, like it's creating a safe space. Like if somebody doesn't feel safe, you know, it's only going to exacerbate the problem. And so that is a huge part of it. But yes, being told that like you can't do something is absolutely a motivation to do it and do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's I think what's interesting as well is we see this as trainers that, oh, there's a general rule of thumb and there are exceptions. So when someone says you shouldn't run, but fair, but what if my recovery methods are second to none? And it's not to go against any healthcare professionals' orders or suggestions, but, you know, assuming that the average person might not recover as intense as some, and if you take that route, you might be better. You might be pretty efficient about it. But, you know, I think it's like, if we go home, how many of us are religiously foam rolling, or not foam rolling until something comes up, right? Like an ache. So there's that to be said. The way I like to think of it is, if when you look at a picture of your human body, and if you had, let's say, like a surgery on like your left arm, if your right arm is 100%, your left arm its full capacity might now be 95%, right? I think it's hard for you to think you can get complete capacity, because whether it's restriction, whether it's scar tissue, it's just the fact that it's been through a procedure, it's not going to be 100%, right? So your base level is a little bit different. I think that's important for people to remember, that it's just not, it sucks. But the way I spoke about to myself was like, look, this injury sucks, but I'm not losing my leg at the end of the day, right? Like, it's a little less functional, but and I think what you spoke about running, for me, it was about getting optimal range in all the body joints because of the injury. And then also you start to think, I think possibly if the injuries occurred, these injuries between mine and yours, if they occurred before our training careers, do you ever think about, oh, what would I have done at the time if I was a trainer? Or what would I have done differently prehab, like not knowing an incident was going to happen, but things that I could have done to help strengthen? Do you ever have those kind of thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish that I had known then what I know now, for sure. And I think also like part of it is like, you know, our body is so somatic, and it's always like trying to give us clues and talk to us and tell us what's going on. And I think that like when you get an injury, it's like there's more insight to it. And I think there's more exploration that needs to be done. And like, why did this happen? And like, how could I have prevented this? And like, what steps like leading up were like showing me signs that I was ignoring? And I think those are really important as well, you know?
That's a really good point, because I think it's hard. This, when I hear stories of, hey, my shoulder was hurting and my husband just drilled a Theragun in my neck for like half an hour last night, it felt so good. Those are stories that frighten me, one, for a number of reasons, but something that, as you were saying as well, I think it's fair to say that the source of the pain isn't always the, can't think of. The source isn't always the cause of the pain, or vice versa, right? So if you're speaking about if you're sensing in your hip, it's not to say your hip is a problem. It might be the misalignment in your ankles or your knees, or your feet are asymmetrical, or the arches aren't symmetrical. It's something. How do you communicate that to clients when they say, "Oh, my hip's bothering me"? It must be that yes, you could be sitting down too long, but could also be that your skeletal structure is asymmetric in the sense that one limb is longer than the other. So you're always going to have some compensation, some imbalance. Like, what are some of the conversations you have around those subjects where clients, just have to remember there's the bigger picture involved?
So wherever you have pain is very rarely where the injury actually is or where the cause actually is. And so, that's number one, the first thing that we bring to the table. And then we look at like the opposing side to it. Like, if their hip is bothering them, I always go for the psoas. Like I always go for like their core because 90%
Right.
of the time that's where it is. Or if their hips are tight, like their ankle mobility is probably limited. So yeah, it's like the kinetic chain. It's what have they been doing over the last 24 to 48 hours? Like when did it start? How long has it been happening? Is there anything that hurts it? Is there anything that helps it? So it's like you kind of go through all these questions and like create an awareness around it to find like the meat of it, like what's
source of it.
causing. Yeah,
That's good, because I think that's something that I'm always conversing to just everyone, really, right? And yeah, it's easy to think that, hey, as you said, that's interesting to the psoas. Sometimes we try and limit the amount we mention the pandemic, COVID, but that has had a lot more of us sitting down. And I think Angel can speak to this, that when you do virtuals, you try and be standing, correct?
Yeah.
I'm standing.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we all developed something a little bit different because of it. But like right now, I'm using a laptop stand that I shouted out in the last episode, and I can go on and on about. And I also have a tripod that I use, just because I felt it instantly. I felt it in my hips. I felt it in my hamstrings. I wasn't burning enough calories, or I wasn't burning the calories that I used to burn in a day. And that was one problem. But the other problem was just my joint health was degrading, and my muscular health was degrading just because of being so sedentary. So having the options to sit or stand or walk around in a little square as my clients are doing their glute bridges or something, that helped me address these little things that could potentially be bigger problems. But having that foresight of like being a movement specialist and appreciating the body and knowing when the body is saying your neck is a little bit tight, it's not because of nothing, it's because something happened, right? So then you have to take a look, what happened, how do I backtrack, how do I put the pieces together? But anyway, I'm going on a tangent. But
no, it's fair to say, though, I think that's an adjustment you made. I actually tried consciously a couple of sessions to stand up, and I started hinging, started leaning like on the countertop. I was like,
yeah,
spread my legs out.
you gotta train your body back into that stuff. Even when I started, it sounds silly, but when I started walking again, right, when I started to walk around, I realized that I had to train myself how to walk again, because I realized I was stumbling, I was dragging my feet. And this was probably in like April. No, it was probably like May or June. It wasn't even that far along after everything had stopped. But it was just like such an abrupt stop to what we were used to, that my body just wasn't ready for it. My proprioceptors weren't ready for it. It was just very difficult for me to re-engage those small things that we probably take for granted, and definitely keep us going.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of us, I think also when it came to coming back to doing in person, the number of hours standing as well, you're like, oof, like I've been sitting down for the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to throw it to, we mentioned regeneration. When it comes to regen, we can actually discuss both personal and client-centered, but what are some of the strategies you like to focus on for both yourself and clients for regen?
So sleep obviously is always number one. That's always the conversation that we are having, and it's tends to be an issue a lot for
Crazy,
myself.
right? For sleep.
Oh my God. And it's like if you're not sleeping, everything else is
Oh,
affected by it, you know? And breathing. Like this is like something that I teach people that is it's so profound how many people are breathing so shallowly, so like without even any awareness, you know? So 90% of my sessions start with breathing exercises. And just getting into that meditative state and like meditation, that's another thing that I talk about. And, you know, I tell them that like meditation is kind of like a massage for your mind, you know, and it's
hmm.
just releasing preconceived ideas, thoughts, notions, and taking, you know, if it's our hour, like taking that hour for yourself and like putting everything else to the wayside and like setting an intention for that workout. And like in terms of like my runs, like I always set an intention for my run. It makes such a huge difference. It's something that I picked up in yoga. Like when you get onto the mat and you set an intention, it is going to affect the way that you move and the way that you move through things. And it's going to help you break through barriers that maybe you couldn't have. And so you're taking care of your mind is so important. Taking care of your body is so important, like your spirit, like all of those things are combined, especially when you're working with the body. So meditation, I do yoga, sleep, make sure you're eating enough and drinking enough water, like just basic, taking care of your basic needs is so important. Shutting shutting off from technology, just being present in the moment, connecting with nature if you have that ability. And if you don't, finding ways to find that connection with yourself and with others, laughing. I recently went to a comedy show, which was like the best medicine in the world. Like just like doing simple things and enjoying life, you know, it's like turning on to that parasympathetic nervous system is so important, especially when you're putting your body through such high amounts of stress all the time.
I wanted to jump in on that. I agree that comedy clubs are the best medicine. And I was saying this the other day. I had someone, I think it was a client that was going through something, and I figured to suggest like just watch comedy because that is, it does, no matter how shitty a day you're having, it lifts you up. But I have a question on piggyback off that because when I did an assessment and sleep was a big rock for me, sorry, and still is a big rock, right? And the person suggested headspace, I think I want to say. So someone like myself who I was very, how do I say, resistant to the idea back then, and I think I'd be more open today because I understand better how you're talking about sleeping has the knock-on effects of your hormone levels, like your concentration, like your workout, all this stuff. So if you have a client, let's say like myself, that isn't very open to the idea, and everything you just spoke about, and I thought that was a very good analogy of like a massage for your mind, because that's something that even though it's not physically, like it's not something we can physically manipulate right now, right? That is one of the closest things or a good example of why it's effective. Someone like myself who doesn't buy into or who finds it hard to buy into meditation, so using an app like that, like what are some of the first conversations you're having? Kind of piggyback with that analogy you mentioned.
So, I always, a lot of my clients, especially my male clients, give me a hard time about meditation. I think it's like very like it's way too spiritual. Like they don't want to tap into it. So we start off small. You know, I do box breathing, which is so important. And box breathing is inhaling, holding it at the top, exhaling, and holding it at the bottom for an equal amount of seconds. So I'll do like 4 or 5 seconds. So you inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and you hold it out for 4 seconds. And just focus on your breath, focus on the count, focus on the number. That's a form of meditation in and of itself. It doesn't have to be anything extreme. Um, and there was something else that you said, and I can't remember what it was, but it kind of sparked something within me.
Sleep being a big rock, or not being open to meditation or headspace.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember, but for sleeping being a challenge, just doing the breathing exercises beforehand. I always send my clients to YouTube because you can find so many things on YouTube. You can just listen to music. Like there are different hertz, right? That like
Mhm.
different vibrations, which has a chemical reaction in your brain. Um, and it can do all these different things, which I won't go into. But yeah, it's just a simple way to shut down everything and kind of put you back at like homeostasis.
Mm. I like the music. The music is the good one. That's thankfully things such as Spotify have sleep melodies or sleep music or nature sounds as well. And one thing was I mentioned this when I spoke to you in person the week, but we moved to an apartment, same building, but the noise level is so much louder than it was before, and to the point now where it's almost background noise. But the first week or so, like I mentioned, there's some people drag racing on 8th Ave. Like I didn't know there was. I feel like the Indy 500 or something. I don't know, but it's really extreme. But I think when I was doing research about it, some of the things that came up a lot of were noise canceling machines that just were like white noise, sorry, right, or like nature sounds, and those are some of the things that I've seen a lot when I'm researching, or earplugs. But the only thing with earplugs is I'm worried I'm not gonna wake up to my alarm.
Yeah.
So because it's happened once before when I had to be somewhere early, and I was like, there was a panic together and whatever. But
So,
yeah.
I mean, melatonin is a natural.
So I take it pretty
Is
much every day, and I didn't want to in the beginning, but full disclosure, when it comes to, I always struggle with falling asleep. Period.
okay.
I've always struggled with it. So when it comes to getting to sleep, it's a huge rock for not just it's so many things. When I spoke with my at one point my mentor, he was trying to break down what part of sleeping, and I was like, it's all of it. It's the falling asleep. I'm somewhat better at staying asleep, but falling back asleep, if I wake up too early, it just isn't happening. My body, when it wakes up, and because I've been getting up earlier the past few months consistently, even on weekends, 7:30, my body's like, let's up, let's go. And I'm not upset about it, but it has to do uh, with consistent bedtimes as well, right? So some of that's been fluctuating, but I think going back to the use of melatonin, if I'm going to bed around 10, because I know I'm not going to shut off before 9:30 at the very late, at the very earliest, and I have to get up at 4:45, that's what, like just under 7 hours. I want to make sure that when I go to bed at 10, I'm not just, and this is crazy, but sometimes I'm rolling around in bed for an hour, like trying to go to sleep. And I could have done everything with meditating. I could have done everything with not looking at electronics for an hour. It's just my body just takes an hour to shut off naturally. So the melatonin is something I've become dependent on. I don't like that, but it's just something that, hey, I have to get up in 6.5 hours. I need to sleep for at least 6 of those hours. I can't be rolling around for 2, 3 of them. And it's happened before when I've been rolling around in bed for 3 hours and just cannot sleep. And that's not very often. But when I speak to, let's say, my father spoke to me about like reading books, didn't really help. Doing this. So it's not as if it's one thing. The one thing that had helped was having Alfie because it set a routine. And when it comes to habits, it set the habit of, all right, 9 o'clock I woke him last, or depending how late I'm gonna go to sleep, right? Like I woke him like an hour, half hour before I go to sleep. I'm doing my nightly routine, whatever, but that helped a lot. I think Angel can speak to this. We did a meeting where I said like sleep was my big rock. I don't know how to solve it. And a week later I came back, or like a month later I came back in a presentation. I thought, look, like having the animals really helped me because it set habits, set routines where my body knows that there's very dependent on a body clock, right? So that had helped. And then COVID kind of screwed things up a little bit because I was so used to a routine. But we also had another guest on the other week that came on and said that didn't realize how much we needed sleep. I think when you're getting up at 4 or 5 a.m. every single day, you're used to it and you're doing it. But when COVID happened last year and we're not getting up until 6:30, 7 o'clock, maybe 8 some days because of the client schedule, you're like, wow, my body needs that. And we've spoken about it before. We found it hard to do it every single day back in the hour. It just feels ungodly now. I don't know how you feel about that, but
Yeah, I definitely don't get up as early as I used to. But I
yeah.
definitely have routines. Like before I go to bed, I have a routine. When I wake up in the morning, I have a routine, and that helps me a lot. One thing that I was going to say about meditation is literally just being present in the moment. That's
Mm,
it. It's erasing all thoughts from your mind, because your thoughts are going to be from the past or the future, right? That's it. So being present in the moment and being aware of what's happening around you and having like a conscious awareness, and it's almost like an out of body experience where you are able to identify things without creating such an emotional attachment to them, right? Like, so that's why like counting helps. In terms of falling asleep, I think, setting a nightly routine is really important no matter what time you go to bed, just like having a few things that you do before you go to bed. Chamomile tea is a really good thing to help
I've
kind
heard
of
it helps.
calm your nervous system. For people who have like racing thoughts.
That's me a lot of the time, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this is an analogy that I give my clients all the time. If you have a sink full of dishes, right? Like you're going to think about those dishes until you have to get them done. It's like, okay,
Yeah, I got to wash them before I go to bed as well. That's one thing.
right. So but once you wash the dishes, you don't think about them,
Yep.
right? So it's the same thing with a thought. So the reason why this thought just keeps repeating in itself and your mind is racing is because it's not a completed thought. It's one thing that you learn in neuroscience is there's like a 4-part process that any thought or experience has to have for it to be completed and to be a conscious thought or experience. And so it's just an unfinished thought. So one thing that you can do is before you go to bed, whatever's on your mind, whatever's bothering you, is just writing it on a piece of paper, because it literally takes it out of your mind. And you can pick it back up in the morning. You can worry about it in the morning, but for the night, like this is your time. It's dedicated for you. It's again like setting an intention for your sleep, the same way we set an intention for our workout. And whether you're conscious of it or not, you're always setting an intention for your workout, right? Because I'm sure you guys program for yourselves and or your clients, and you're doing this workout because this. You can always answer why you're doing something at like for a workout. And so you're putting it on the paper with the intention of like this is my time to sleep. Like I'll worry about that tomorrow. Um, and like I'm totally guilty of this, but like having your phone in bed and like, having the screen on. One thing that has helped me, I used to wake up in the middle of the night a lot, is not checking the time and not checking my phone when I wake up. Because once your eyes see that light, it automatically thinks it's time to be awake. So you're gonna have a hard time falling back asleep. So as long as I know it's not time to get up, like I just well, count or whatever. You know what I mean? Like just breathe. Breathing is like that's how you regulate your nervous system. It's how you can kind of tap into your parasympathetic and calm it down to go to sleep.
No, that makes sense.
There's a lot there. I'm happy that you brought up like kind of writing ideas down and intentions being like the thought, the relationship between like how you have something that's on your mind and then the relationship between doing something and having your brain kind of see the resolution, even though it's not a full resolution, at least something happened in that direction. Because sometimes, although my sleep has been pretty good, we recently got blackout curtains, so that's been a game changer. I don't even know what day of the week it is sometimes. I feel my next challenge was trying to not be so anxious. And I realized that writing things down has really helped me out during the pandemic, doing virtual sessions. Like sometimes I just realize I need to write something down before I forget. And sometimes it's like scheduling another session. Sometimes it's following up with a client about, their foot pain or something like that. Like I just remember it. And I'm just like, okay, do this. And then I've just been writing a lot. In fact, even now for the podcast, I know you had made mention to something that Jacques said that it brought a thought to your mind and then you just like forgot what it was. That's happened so much to me during these podcasts that I'm writing stuff down here as well to keep somewhat of like a fluid train of thought so I don't go off on a tangent like Jacques sometimes does on a couple of our episodes.
Too often.
But I really enjoyed that conversation, and I'm definitely gonna keep some of those things for myself and then also relay some of that stuff to my clients. So that's very helpful. I wanted to also talk about some of your running stuff. So I know that you're a runner. A lot of runners talk about the runner's high and how it can enhance creativity and optimism. Have you ever experienced it? And if so, what are some things that came from it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, after the second mile, that's it. And it's like you go into a trance. And I mean, I can explain to you on like a scientific level, like how that happens. If
Please
you guys
do. Yeah.
And so what happens when you're running is you're using both sides of your body, right? And your eyes are constantly going back and forth. So you're activating your cross hemisphere brain waves. So you're turning on both sides of your brain at the same time, which is why you get into this runner's high and you get all of these creative ideas because your body's under a state of stress. But it's also, if you're able to regulate your breath, you stay in a parasympathetic state, like simultaneously, right? Which is why it becomes um, an endurance sport. So yes, I definitely tap into so many creative thoughts when I'm running. It helps you process things. It brings up things that are internal and just helps you process them because that's how you process things is by activating both sides of your brain at the same time. And so recently, Sunday, I think it was, I was running the park and I've been working on a lot of personal projects and, like obviously I work for myself, so I have a lot of free time and I've been in school and I've been studying art and different types of things. And there was this one project that I've been kind of pondering and like where I'm going and what I'm doing. And it just gave me all these ideas and it always gives me ideas. I'm not going to go too much into detail about it because it's still a work in progress. But sometimes when I'm running, like I'll take a note on my phone because I get so many thoughts while I'm running, and it's like this. If you're not writing it down, it just, you can go off into a tangent. It goes to the wayside. You completely forget about it. It becomes a thought and then it's like out of your head. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. That's really all I have to say about that.
No, that's great. And in fact, like I was even thinking about it from a scientific standpoint. If we understood more about how to trigger that creativity and that optimism, that those same chemical reactions that we get from doing that, it could bring about so many different things. Like I'm pretty sure I was reading a book the other day or listening to somebody talking the other day, and they said, imagine if you were, I mean, this is kind of grim, but imagine if you were passing away and then somebody was to, like a version of yourself would be telling you all the things that you could have been or all the things that you could have done had you just done this, right? And one of the things that I was thinking about is like, I struggle sometimes with being creative. And I love the idea of having thoughts and generating thoughts, and I get really excited about it. So now I'm capitalizing on those random thoughts by writing it down, and that's helped me kind of explore this side of creativity that I've never had before. And it's just been so interesting for me to just have access to that. That aside, the scientific side that I was thinking about was some people who run. I unfortunately David couldn't make it to this episode today, but one of the things that he talks about is how he hates cardio, he hates running. But I think it's interesting because what if we were able to tap into that runner's high a little bit sooner? For you, it might be mile 2. For me, it's around the same time, like mile 2. But for some people, they either don't get to mile 2 and they never have access to that, and they never have access to the creativity, the endorphin rush. I think it's like endocannabinoids or something like that. The optimism, like they never have access to that from running or from any other cardiovascular exercise. I was just wondering, like, if we learn how to tap into that, or if we learned how to figure out who has access to that sooner or who has access to that later, and then kind of cater to those groups, it would be so pivotal, so monumental for the fitness industry. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has access to that, and it is training yourself how to tap into it. And through your breath, you tap into it. And that's why runners tap into it because they're focused on their breath the entire time,
Yeah.
right? And so in terms of how quickly you get there, from a scientific level, what happens is, I mean, so there's a 4-part process that happens with anything that you're doing ever. We have 4 parts to our brain, and they have to travel through each part. So the first is your brainstem, which is your fight or flight, which is where you are in those first couple of miles, right? Because you're putting your body in an intense form of a sympathetic state. So you have to regulate your breath to get through that. And then you get in the flow, because then you get into your limbic brain, and that's where the creative juices lie. So it's literally just getting past that point, and people just, they shut down. They don't want to get past that point. But if you can manipulate your breath to just stay in that calm state and just navigate through it, you can tap into it. So, like, obviously, I've had a ton of injuries, and I had one over the past couple of years, and getting back into running was very hard. And so, like, right now, I'm not running fast. I'm running because I enjoy it and I love it. And it's like, it is such a high for me, and it just brings such an awareness to myself, my life. It's such a connection with myself. I'm always like learning something new with every run. Um, and so like I run so slow, and like I run at a conversational pace, and that's it. And like that's where I'm at right now. I mean, like we're 20 weeks out from the marathon, so I have tons of time. But like just running at a conversational pace is so enjoyable, and you get to that runner's high quicker because you're not so stressed out, you know? And like that's why meditation can also take you there. Your breath is
Interesting.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also doing some research into breath work and how it can trigger certain parts of the central nervous system, or like your parasympathetic versus your sympathetic tone, and targeting the vagus nerve and all that stuff. It's really unbelievable. And there's a lot of untapped potential. There's already potential that's tapped, and then there's a lot of untapped potential that we have just gotten to the brink of. Even nostril breathing, I heard nostril breathing is really cool, and I only read about it, and I was like, nostril breathing. Then I did a little bit more research, and I saw some of that. Box breathing, as you spoke about before, is really good for that too. But there's so many different levels of breathing and meditation and mindfulness, and how we can tap into that to have some really good effects, both on the performance side and then on the emotional and psychological side as well. I wanted to ask another question about movement. So introducing flexibility to some clients who hate to improve on flexibility has been a struggle for me. I know that you are more mobile than I am in some senses. So I wanted to see like what your take on it was. Have you had clients who, need to stretch more, need to kind of like be a little bit more mobile, a little bit more limber in order to see some performance aspects increase or improve? And how do you get them from point A to point B, like when they're really resistant to that?
That's a great question. So I, if you're like inflexible in a certain area, it's usually like our bodies are made up of energy, right? And it's usually just stuck energy in that area. So getting blood flow to that area is so important. And so I will mask it with like a dynamic movement. I introduce a lot of that into the people who don't want to stretch, who don't want to do any kind of static stretching or yoga or anything. And they feel so good afterwards. Like the world's greatest stretch is one of my go-tos. I manipulate that in so many different ways, and people love it. Like you add a push-up in and they think it's like so hard, and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like simple things. Just keep it simple. Keep it as simple as possible.
That's a great kind of way to think about it, masking it. I've been trying to do more of that. Sometimes it becomes a little bit tricky to do, because then they're, either trying to, what they do, they try to like speed past the part that has the mobility aspect of it. For like, for example, when you bring the foot up, they'll either like not bring the foot up as high as they can, or they'll just like do that, rotate really quickly, and then go back into the plank. It's like, no, just hold that. Right. So it's so interesting to see them be resistant verbally and then be resistant physically as well.
And that's the thing. It's like as above, so below, right? Like people who are resistant to being mobile tend to be resistant to change in general. They're probably stuck in a stressed out state. And so they need it more, but it makes them so uncomfortable to be there because they're not used to it. They're used to like going, which is like, so imminent about life, right? Like we were all used to just going. And then COVID hits and everybody stops. And of course it's uncomfortable, like obviously, but, that intensity that you feel when you can't do things, people go into that place when they try to stretch. Like it is such an emotional experience because emotion is just energy in motion. So when they're tapping into a stagnant energy, it's a stagnant emotion, and sometimes that's really hard to feel, you know, and they don't want to feel it. That's why they want to move so fast. So using the dynamic movement is a way that kind of gives them a little bit of what they need and want at the same time.
Yeah, and the other thing is sometimes age really matters too. From my perspective, when I've trained some of my clients and they're a little bit younger and they have trouble with stretching, I'm just like, all right, we need to hammer this home now, because I've seen 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds, and it only gets harder as time goes on. And then there's only so much that you can do at that point. Right. So I just mass ordered a couple, actually this week, a couple of yoga straps for my clients, you know, just to say, we're going to focus on stretching because this is something that you said you will do, but you haven't done, or it's something that you don't want to spend time on like in session, but we have to make time for it because it is so important.
And then they feel so good afterwards. And like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
is amazing. And like,
Right.
remember what that feels like for the next
Right.
you know?
It's true. It's true. And it just so happens like sometimes some of the people that I train are very large guys. They're like 6'5" and weigh like over 200 pounds. And they're just like, oh, I can't wait till we can go back to stretching in person so you can stretch me out. It's like, oh God, now I have to move your limbs around. Like you didn't do it during the lockdown. And now I have to like move your, I don't know, 50-pound, 80-pound leg around in space. But anyway,
It's
Jacques.
hard. I know. I hate that. They're so heavy, you know? Like it's like,
I know.
but
Right.
I wanted to ask one final thing, because I know we want to respect your time. With this marathon coming up, what are you doing the same or different to your last marathon?
so obviously, like I take the things that work and leave the things that didn't. Um, when I ran the last marathon, I was very busy and very stressed out. I had a lot of things going on in my personal and professional life. Um, I and it was my first, so like you learn from it, right? Like you have no idea what you're doing. You just like I had coaches and you know all these things like, but it's trial and error, and it's still trial and error. And so like every run that I go out on, I'm always learning about my body. I'm always learning something new. I sprained my ankle recently just because I pushed myself harder than I was capable of, because I'm not used to even moving my body as much as I used to. And so, you know, I'm just scaling it back. And I think that getting into a routine early when we're still 20 weeks out is so important, because now you can tend to those things and you have time to tend to them. My sleep is so much better than it was when I ran my first marathon.
The recovery is going to be huge.
My health is so much better than it was when I ran my first marathon. My appetite is so much better than it was when I ran my first marathon. Like that was a real struggle for me. Because I don't think I ever really focused on like I've always eaten for fuel, but like to increase your carbohydrate intake that much was a struggle for me. And finding what works for you. Like I had a lot of like allergies and like, you know, but it was really just other things that were happening. But I'm in like a good groove with that. You know, it's like getting to know your body. It's getting to know like what is like what your tweaks are, you know, like it's a form of self-discipline that I don't think a lot of other things can compare to, because you literally have like you give it all and you can't like rely on anything but whatever's inside of you to keep going, you know? And it's like it's up to you. Like you get in what you put out. And you have to remember like it's like life. Like it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Like and it's about the journey. Like you have to enjoy the journey and just be honest with where you are and where you want to go and like what is actually attainable, um and being consistent with your training. Because if you do the work, it works, and it doesn't always feel that way, and sometimes it's really like gruesome and mundane and you don't like see the results that you want to see. But I was on a call the other day with the team that I'm running with, and they were like, the marathon is just a celebration, and it's really about the journey that is like the real, win. And it is because it's like, the finish line to the marathon just becomes a new starting line to your life, because you become such a different person. It really changes you. So yeah.
No, that's cool. That's very insightful. It's interesting you say that because, yeah, like if at this point, if your sleep is dramatically improved, if your eating feels dramatically improved, and then your stress levels are dramatically reduced, those are three things right there that are like on switches really to have a more, I'd say more successful marathon, but to feel more better prepared for your next one. So that sounds very promising. And three simple things, right? Like no quick fixes, just things you walk on, things that will all have the ability to influence, but are not quick fixes. There's no supplement for that fix. So it's good that you speak to that, because I think sometimes we get lost in grabbing something to fix, like you said, last sleep, or it doesn't work with that, unfortunately.
I love how you said be honest with yourself too and where you're at. And I really resonate with that, because sometimes I want myself to be like 3 or 4 weeks ahead. Like I want my body to be 3 or 4 weeks ahead of its current state, especially when preparing for something like that. But you can lie to other people, but you can't lie to your body, right? Your body knows what is happening on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, month-to-month. So you can't lie to that. You can't lie to your training, because your body is going to say your knees aren't ready for that. Your ankles aren't ready for that. Your cardiovascular system is not ready for this intensity. So I love that you said, be truthful to yourself, or be honest with yourself in regards to preparing for it, because I think a lot of people, especially for the first time around, you want to be further, because it's so time consuming, preparing for a marathon or any sort of endurance sport, because it's so time consuming, you just can't figure out all the pieces, and it does take discipline and it does take practice. But a lot of people just kind of try to cut corners, and that never works out.
No. And, your body's always trying to talk to you. And it's like, like every time I go out for a run, I learn something new. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so then we get back to the gym and we work on this. And like,
Mm-hmm.
it's an opportunity to really kind of manipulate your training outside of your running to help your running. Like, it's like, I feel like whenever I go for a run, it's like, okay, this is like my performance, like test, like how's my body doing, where are we at, what do we need to work on this week. And I pretty much stick to the same workout routine, but I tweak things here and there, and like if I need to like fix this or work on that, like it just shows me where my weakness is. And like you're only as strong as your weakest point, so if you can start to work on that, then it just improves everything overall.
Yeah, my latest lesson was that my body is not used to cuts and lateralizing as much as it used to be. And I learned that because like there was, something happening in the park, a kid dropped the ball goes to the street, and I like try to cut around. And then, after that, like 3 steps after, I was like, oh, that didn't feel too good. And I keep going. And then later on that night, I was just like, wow, my knee is just acting funny. And then it's like those small things, like it does talk to you. You just got to listen.
Exactly.
Right. And then learn a lesson and then plan around it. Next time you just kick the ball or whatever, like you jump over the ball. But yeah.
Yeah, I think lateral movements is something that's so underrated. Like I think they're so important, and people are just so used to being in like a frontal plane that don't, like, when you start to introduce that, it creates a whole new level of fitness and awareness.
Yeah, and it's so good to practice. Agility drills, they're so good to practice. Sometimes it feels like, you're going at a snail's pace, but it doesn't matter. You're practicing. Central nervous system is kicking in. Physiological responses are happening. There are cues that are there as well. So much is going on, but we don't pay too much attention to it. So, but it is important. Lessons learned.
Definitely.
All right, so let's wrap this podcast up. But before we do that, and before we let you go, please feel free to plug any information, upcoming events, or where people can find more about you?
Yeah, so I mean, you can check out my Instagram at Missy Castro. I'm running with Team for Kids for the marathon, so I'm doing a fundraiser with them. You can go to runwithtfk.org and search Melissa Castro. Link to that is also in my Instagram bio, and that's all for now.
More to
That's
come
awesome.
soon.
Yeah, there'll be more stuff in the future, but right now I'm just like the marathon is like my main thing, and I'm so excited to be doing it. And follow my journey on Instagram. I'm posting about it, and yeah, see you at the finish line.
Keep your eyes peeled, folks.
Right.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Missy. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, guys. This was wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you
Of
so much. We'll
course.
talk to you soon, Missy, for
All right,
sure.
guys. Good to see you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Likewise.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
That was an awesome episode. That was good. Did
So
well
many
without
lessons.
David.
Yeah, I know. I wish David could have been here in person, but so many lessons learned. So
But common themes, right?
mhm.
Being in the moment, listening to your body, and no quick fixes was some of the things she was talking about. Like start small, and that was good though. I think it's always a very great conversation to have when someone's making some very distinct differences of whether it's a marathon or processes that are so much better off, and identifying those variables such as what she did with like sleep and nutrition and stress, right? We talk so much about sleep, but if we don't identify how stressful something is or a current situation we're in, that has so much impact on our current life and our ability to do tasks going forward. So that was good for those reasons.
Yeah, and simple, like you said, simple progressions and taking this step by step. Even some people who I have who are working towards being able to run again, I always congratulate them. They're always like, oh, I ran just 2 miles, or I ran just like 1 mile or something like that. It's like, no, it's not negligible. Everything that you do, it's not negligible. Your body is always adapting, always responding. There's something happening regardless of if you see progress or you don't see progress. There is progress there. It might be on a micro level. We just aren't perceiving it. But it is important to go through it, have the routine, practice, repetition. So it is cool. And then also what she spoke about with breathing and how there's so many ways to access, the parasympathetic,
Breathing is
sympathetic
huge in
tone.
that respect.
That's it's great. We learned a lot.
Yeah, 100%. Hope you guys enjoy that. Before we call it a day, you have any plans for the weekend? Things going on?
I did the composting today.
Oh yeah? So is that spot right by you, right?
Yeah, so I didn't go to the spot that you had recommended. It was on that same link, but it was one that was way closer. It was just like a block away.
Oh, even
I know
better.
It's like that one. That was like the long block. This is a short block. So I know both are a block away,
awesome.
but yeah, it was very accessible. I still have to make it more of a routine. So right now I had it in a brown paper bag, and then I had a plastic bag inside the brown paper bag, and I just threw my stuff there. I think it would be helpful for me to get and there's a corner store that has like those bins or whatever. I might just get one with a lid, just to make sure that everything kind of stays there and it doesn't like tip over or whatever, and then it stays, there's a spot for it. Right now we have, trash, we have recyclables, and now we're having the compost. And I also realized that mangoes are compostable as well. The mango seeds. And they actually, there's a whole process to it. I was talking to some of my clients about it. Some of them have gardens, and they were like, oh yeah, we do this and this helps and that helps.
Oh, some of them do it already when they use the
yeah, I'm just like, man,
shit. It just seems so it just like that wasn't my intention last week to make anyone feel guilty about it. It's just something that I became a bit more aware of, and I was like, this is totally
no, I think
doable.
it helps. Yeah, not that, not like coming from a negative sense, but if it's doable, and it can't hurt to try, right? Like I was also in my mind, I was like, if I get roaches, like that shit ain't working out for me anymore.
Well, you keep it where? You keep it by the trash, you said?
Yeah, I keep it by the trash.
So what I've been doing is I keep it in the bottom drawer in the fridge, and I keep it in a plastic bag tightly sealed. it's a bit of a process to like, oh, I just peeled a banana, let me get the bag out of the fridge,
Yeah, and then you have to get the bag out.
But I think when Georgine spoke about it, she does it in the freezer, and then the reason that, and like you keep it in the fridge and the freezer, you shouldn't worry about roaches at that point because they're closed off. But that if you're having outside, especially in the summer, you're gonna get those fruit flies. Well, depending how often you empty it as well. If you empty it every couple of days, you should be good.
Yeah.
But I'm going like once a week at most, so I've got stuff in like a week.
I gotta check this spot out because I went today and it was open, available. They have like bins outside of the garden, and then they said it's staffed on Fridays between whatever time and whatever time.
Got it.
So I went over there and there was nobody there, but I saw the trash, the bins there. So I'm wondering if I just have access to that. They say it's open 24/7.
Yeah, I saw that.
So we'll see. I mean, I'll pass by tomorrow, and if the bins are still there, then I can just empty it out really quickly. But that's a good shout about putting it in the fridge or the freezer. I didn't think about that. I don't really have the freezer space. But you know, we might have to move some stuff around. I know she's vegan, so like there ain't that many things that are in the freezer to begin with.
There's not as many things. Yeah, there's not as many things in the freezer. Maybe
except ice cubes, fruit.
Ice cubes, fruit. Yeah.
But there was one more point that I was gonna make about it. Damn, I should have wrote that down. But
for our viewers though, Angel, if anyone's checks on YouTube, look how fresh Angel is looking, man. This guy is putting on a clinic for the barber. You guys want a barber in Harlem? Look at this guy. Check this guy out. He is in free advertisement right now.
No, we trying to make moves this summer. It's gonna be a hot boy summer. We gotta look right.
Oh shit.
But yeah, so yeah, it's good. Compost, good move. This was a great. Thank you for putting it out there, and thank you for shout out to Georgine as well for putting it out there.
And I'm glad it's close by because the first one said you have to go to the Bronx. Like, it just has to make sense, right? Like, it can't be I'm going to a different borough to drop off a little bit of like vegetable fruit waste. It doesn't make any sense.
It's so crazy.
I'm glad. And a block away, that's perfect.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that it'll work out really well, and I'm getting more on top of that stuff too. Again, like to Missy's point, if there are dishes there, you're going to think about the dishes before you go to sleep. Now that I actually saw this one through, now I know it's like across the street. It's going to be one less thing to really
become a habit. Yeah. That was my thing when I dropped off last week for the first time as well. It's like, all right, I think I joked about it, but I seriously brought it with me in 2 bags on the way to train a client. I was all right, let me go. I had a cancellation or change it to session. I was like, all right, I have the time to go and find and explore it. I was like, oh, it's so easy. Like I have to go down the area to drop off, get some of Alfie's food anyway. I bury that habit. I have to go down there anyway. Boom, boom, boom. So,
yeah, that's the age-old habit. What is it? It's like tie-in or something like that. There's an actual term for it. When you habit stacking. When you habit stack, so you have one habit on top of the other. So that way it's just much
like
more
brushing
efficient.
your teeth and drinking water. You're gonna brush your teeth every day, twice a day anyway. Why don't you have a glass of water?
Yeah,
I hope so.
All right.
Wrap it up.
Yep, let's wrap it up. Thanks guys for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next one.
Bye guys.